Hello, folks. Another episode of Burning Platform. This time, it's a pleasure to have Tamas Hevizi again. He's been on several of my video episodes before. But this time, I saw him present on his 2022 predictions. Now, he's a private equity. He represents private equity for Automation Anywhere. So he's going to look at digital forecasts from a very different perspective. Tamas, I'm looking forward to hearing. I've heard you present them, but this is going to be great, and we'll get a chance to discuss each of your points as we go along.
Vinnie, always a pleasure, and maybe explaining why I'm standing. So this is one of my New Year resolutions. I'm standing up for conversations because human conversations ought to be standing and not sitting or slouching. At least that's my idea. So thanks for having me again. It's great to have a conversation.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So maybe just pre-frame it. So I work primarily for the last 12, 13 years with private equity firms, and they're very tech savvy. But when they think about technology and what technology brings to their companies and their portfolio companies, they tend to ask a lot more about transformational business model questions versus what this technology does or how it fits into my technology portfolio. So my predictions come from conversations that have been around business model change. And sort of the way to think about it before I get into my predictions, and I hope I'll get some of them right, is if you look at technology, and you've been the chronicler of technology and the people in it for such a long time, some technologies are truly transformational in a sense that they change business models. E-commerce has, or even early website, but basically e-commerce did initially, then mobile did, and the way companies interact with it. And I'm fascinated by why certain technologies allow for business model change and certain don't allow for business model change. So when I look at my predictions, I look at them from the sense of, do they have an opportunity to shift business models? Can new disruptors come in, adopt these technologies, and enter a space where the incumbents already have laid out their ranking order, right? So that's sort of how I would think about it. And so I made 5 predictions and a 5 plus 1. And the plus 1 is really way out there. I think some of the others of the 5 may be out there for some, but I believe that this is happening right here, right now for some entities. And another way, so the last 2 years during COVID, we're in the automation space. So we had a lot of customers, and I'm not talking about Automation Anywhere in this conversation, but what I observed is companies, I think, reconsidered what they consider core operations, what they consider their normal business, and what they consider up for reconsideration. So business model change, often people assume that it happens in a strategy room. It happens somewhere people get together, they bring in Bain McKenzie, and they sort of redraw the map. Oftentimes it happens when you're disrupted, when something crisis happens or your perception of a crisis happens, right? So I noticed that the business, everything from airlines, how they handled rebooking, and they used to be completely with human agents, went completely automated, to how hospital staff and clinicians started allocating beds, for example, whereas before it was inconceivable that you would do that task to anybody except the head nurse or the administrator in a hospital. So that's what I mean by business model change and technologies that I think about. But so let's get to it, right? So the number one, probably the closest to everybody's mind is my prediction around hybrid workforce. So I think there's a lot of conversation about remote work. We're all living it. This is one example, right? And I think a big part of that has been communication tools. I think we're way beyond that as a challenge, as an opportunity also for businesses. So hybrid workforce, I mean it at the broadest sense. So I think businesses, whether it's incumbents or disruptors, will be increasingly creating roles that require collaboration between humans and bots or automation, some kind of automated systems or AI. And I think it gets beyond to automating systems and workflows. It gets to a conversation like we experience it in a consumer space. So hybrid workforce will be you, Vinnie, having a digital assistant for real, handling maybe some of the invitations for your guests. That AI may be searching for guests that are more pliable for your audience. They attract more audience. Maybe they're better aligned with their message for you. They do the follow-up. They do the invitations. They handle the responses. So getting to a point where collaboration truly happens beyond the prescribed steps and gets to your digital assistant sort of taking care of tasks on their own. And I think it's happening this year. It's already happening, obviously, in the consumer space. If you look at especially Amazon's program, the skills that Amazon tools get taught, Alexa gets taught in business, it's here, it's now. You see everything from field service to replenishing inventory. So hybrid workforce, big prediction. I think we'll see half of our workforce over time be extended with digital tools.
It's a humongous impact on the enterprise, right? Because I'm already hearing that some employees, as people are planning at managers who to promote and so on, they're having to factor skills that they never had to do 3 years ago. It's like, how does this person relate to people virtually, right? And will he be able to manage a virtual team? So it's starting to have that impact on HR, which means, it's going to be long term. Having said that, I worry that technology vendors pretend that they can control the whole experience, right? They can control the UX, they can control the technology aspect. But we've all seen pretty crappy experiences during the pandemic, right? And so I wonder if people have truly understood what hybrid means. How do you assign machines and people to jump when something fails? I'm still not seeing enough of that, right?
It's interesting, and I think something happened. I look back in history, right, in technology, and if you think about it, historically, where did all the innovation happen? In the military. Then it went to large enterprise. Then it got to consumers. It's everything from the internet to television to radio to the Wi-Fi, right? I think it's amazing to see that right now it happens differently. It happens in consumer. If you ever talk to people in federal or DoD, I mean, they're picking up tools from consumer innovation, right? And I think that shift fundamentally changed the expectations of what that interaction will do, because companies can prescribe the steps, but me as a human, read my mind. So Alexa, figure out what I'm saying. Or I think it was The Economist right now talked about TikTok. Why TikTok is so powerful, to your point, algorithms. So crappy algorithms create crappy experience, but also create a crappy extension of your capability as a person. But if the algorithms get really good, it's predictive. It has to be, because that's the next level, right? So you should expect the needs, analyze my needs, but anticipate my needs. So TikTok does it super well, probably creepily well. But I think with the business side, the same kind of expectations will happen. When you say generally the quarter report, you sort of expect the algorithm to understand that, well, this quarter we have noticed some delays in shipments, or we noticed some customers underperforming. So I'm going to create a variation of that report that highlights deviations from the norm versus or exceptions versus creating a report. So that kind of anticipatory behavior, I think it already happens in business, and it's going to be a bigger part of our life.
Okay. Second prediction.
The second prediction, I'm really sad because it's so obvious, but decentralized finance. So I remember, so yes, it's blockchain, it's Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, and the variations of smart contracts and finance. But I remember going to a University of Washington conference in St. Louis. I think it was like 2011 or 2012, and this was sort of the early days of not just cryptocurrency, but the blockchain applications in business. So it was fascinating. So this was a supply chain conference, believe it or not, supply chain blockchain conference. And I may get the year wrong, but the key point was they were trying to solve some problems that have been nagging us forever. So this is a business application, right? So it has been about trade finance. Like, how do you get shipments across border, but also get the payments, handle the paperwork, and have the provenance, know where things are along the way. And they talked about the extended supply chain, whereas as long as I remember, even at SAP, we talked about it. But if you think about it, what broke right now in the world? Extended supply chain. We have no idea. I read a statistic, like 97% of the companies have no idea what's beyond their immediate suppliers. They don't know where stuff is. So they don't know the suppliers, and further down the road, and how many layers do you have. I think decentralized finance, beyond the payment systems, which frankly, it's happening, it's solvable. I think it's a regulatory question to prevent decentralized financial system to operate properly, but they work, right? Whether it's Bitcoin or the next generation of faster systems. But what I'm talking about decentralized finance is enabling commerce by enabling other pieces of the business process, like supply chain. And payments always happens. We're in business, we're in a commercial society. So payment is one element of solving a problem of integrating parties that don't trust each other. And I think decentralized finance, is there are going to be a lot of decentralized trust. There are going to be systems being trusted with validating suppliers, validating counterparties. It's happening in payments now. If you ever pay with Bitcoin, but it's going to happen in shipments. It's going to happen in other aspects in planning, extended S&OP beyond the enterprise, and collaborating with business partners that don't necessarily can see your demand. So you're doing this at an abstract level. So that decentralized, everything we know about blockchain, I just name it DeFi in general, is going to be a key part of 2022.
So, because you're in private equity, you're probably so far ahead of the average enterprise, right? Clearly in fintech, DeFi is, like you say, it's so obvious, right? But when I look at accounts payable systems in big companies, and look at the games they still play to delay a payment by 30 days or 45 days, I don't know. The human factor is but still needs to evolve. We're still extremely inefficient in what we even though interest rates are so low, the games people play are just unbelievable. So it'd be interesting to see how your prediction turns out.
It's funny. I spend a lot of my time in optimizing day sales outstanding, collections, right? For most businesses, working capital. And you're absolutely right. For the average company, they're still back in the old systems. I don't think so. This is a bold statement, but this is my view. I don't think companies make a leap jump left to their devices. It's not like one day your CFO or accounts payable leader breaks up, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to completely change the way I'm interacting with my suppliers, and I'm going to deploy blockchain to do that. It happens through disruption. So the same way. So again, you're right because of finance leading the way. I think the most fascinating part is not actually banking, but trading. So what's happening in trading, I think it's a predictor of what can happen in all aspects of the business. And I think people think about trading being this super innovative part of commerce or business, but it wasn't always so. It used to be paper based, and that whole industry got disrupted multiple times. Schwab back in the 1990s, and Robin Hood right now. But Robin Hood's sort of proving the point. I think what I expect is to have this kind of disruptor like a Robin Hood come into an industry that had all of its rules figured out, and they didn't want to do it any way differently, and now they have to, and now they're going to turn to a whole different way of operation. And again, to be clear, Robin Hood is not decentralized, but the concept of disruption, I think, happens from the outside. I don't think it happens from the inside. But yes, but just for your listeners, to be clear, I'm not a California visionary here. I'm in rural Pennsylvania, but I'm seeing these conversations day in day out.
That's encouraging. If you can migrate accounts payable from the old philosophy, that'll be a huge victory. What about the third one?
So this is way out there, and I think. I actually think people underestimate what's happening. So big words, the business metaverse. And what we're talking about, just going back to augmented reality, virtual reality, which has been around a long time. I was one of the early adopters of Google Glass. I hate to admit it, because it was sort of a failed experiment. But I think augmentation of our capability in general, I think it's a big technology trend. So that same is true for hybrid workforce. Same is true for augmented reality. I think the view oftentimes is too narrow. It's a gaming. It's an extension of the consumer experience. And there have been situations where augmented reality worked very well in business. So field service was a great adopter, absolutely. Maintenance, right? But it just sort of didn't get outside of the factory or didn't get outside of operations. And there are huge opportunities. And one of the things, if you look at, so business metaverse for me just means that you extend your interaction with other people to other channels beyond computer screens. So you're going to be in a augmented reality, so you still see the rest of the world, or a virtual reality where the rest of the world disappears and you create your own environment. And I'm seeing, so first of all, a couple of things. On the investment side, it's staggering what goes into this. So what's obvious to everybody, why the hell Zuckerberg changed the company's name to Meta? So if somebody didn't have a chance to watch, it's an hour and a half long presentation by Mark Zuckerberg on their vision of Metaverse. I think it's very informing. It's well worth the time. It's not a commercial. It was for a trade conference, but I think it was interesting to see the complete vision, because then you can peel it back and look at business. And a couple of scenarios that I think you can do today. One is, I mean, there's definitely, you can make these meetings more interactive. You could be in a hologram for me, Vinnie, whether it's creepier or not. I think it would make humans are ingrained to look at each other's reaction. It would help in interpersonal reaction, but you made an earlier point. That's a huge issue in remote workforce is, how do you advance? You know, I have my daughter starting her career, right? So how do you advance in a large consulting organization where she is if you never see your manager, you never see your partner, you never see your colleagues? So I think human interaction will be enabled with virtual tools, and the tools are there. And it had been around since, oh my God, I remember going to a business meeting in Second Life, believe it or not, in the old game, right? So I think the business experimented this. Now the tools are at a level where the bets are there. Obviously, Facebook is doing the Horizon workrooms. You can go to Horizon workroom and have business meeting. It's here today, right? They're doing it through Oculus. Same way, I mean, I'm seeing, what's the other one? NVIDIA launched this HoloDesk where you can actually have business documents and look at HoloDesk. So I think, and these are billion-dollar bets, right? So these will come, and some of these, I mean, the Horizon workroom is not for, fitting out your home. It's really for a business environment. So I think since the tools are there, I think there's going to be an opportunity. The question is, beyond communication, what else can you do in business in a virtual environment? So can you get?
I think it'll be role specific, right? Field service. I was blown away during the pandemic how much virtual support became, moved to augmented reality, right? In the maintenance sense. I mean, it's been creeping into every aspect of our life, right? Heads-up displays in cars, sailing, right? I mean, look at all the data that shows up sailing could never be televised 10 years ago. Now, with all the incremental data that shows up on your screen, it makes sense of it. And that's one thing Larry Ellison does not get enough credit for. But he pioneered that, right? So in a lot of ways, it's creeping in gradually. And I agree with you. I think people are going, oh God, Mark is too far out there. I think it's already happening but it's role specific. Very, very.
It is role specific. It's interesting. I got to see so many different industries. So oftentimes industries that people consider sort of laggards in digital, they're actually way ahead. So, this has come up. So the metaverse or this augmented reality came up a lot in healthcare. So if you think about I was working with a client and they did elective surgery, so they had to shut everything down, right? But you had surgery rooms that maybe they were up and running in Florida, but they were not up and running in Kansas City. So you had doctors that were available in Kansas City or in California. You can actually have the star surgeon from cardiologist participate in a surgery in Florida through augmented reality or virtual reality. They could participate, they could be there, and they need to be there because you can't see it on the screen, but you can see in a live 3D situation saying what the patient is doing. The same way, we are in a massive talent crunch. We can't find people. Wouldn't it be great if I hired 5 people and I could get the best, programmers, and I could get the best programmer on the planet? Let's say that person is in Mumbai, be participating with them, not training them on video, but you're sitting next to me, you're coding with me. Yeah. And I think that's sort of again, augmenting human capability virtually. And I think with people working remotely, this is going to be big because I can.
I heard a use case, a company, which really impressive. In their case, they took their aging field service folks and said, you're high risk, move to a remote support. And they send the younger people out in the field, and the more aged, more experienced would support them remotely. So that was a good, like you say, it's like, let's bring multiple levels of support without physically requiring them to be there. So
yeah.
What's the fourth one?
Fourth one, it's probably the easiest to grasp. Digital offshoring. I think there was an author named it Digishoring. I don't know how to quote him, and he insists to be quoted, so I'll just call it digital offshoring. So you obviously know this space well. So the whole transition to offshoring and then nearshoring back because of a variety of issues, language and supply chain. I'm seeing a lot of the large business process outsourcing provider implement automation, bots, chatbots, everything else, and figuring out how they can deal with the frankly their entire business model, because they're billing people based on people in seats and average hold times and customer service stat scores. But when you offload things to your bot and you have you're trying to shift, saying, hey, I could outsource this accounts payable department to my group to Chennai or the Philippines, or I could put all 80% of them on bots with a human set of supervisors. Clients need to understand that that's an option, and the economics will be very different, and they have to work through it. But I see a massive shift. It happened out of necessity when India shut down. You would know this very well. There were entire call centers that had to be shut down, and I had clients scrambling. Okay, what do I do with my call centers? And they started doing the best service they can, which started putting things on chatbots and bots and other automated tools. And then they realized, well, some of this is fine because customers were fine with it, but some of this should be going back to the norm. And then if you can put things on chatbots, why would I do that in Chennai? I could do it anywhere in Alabama, right? So I think there's going to be, I can host my servers anywhere, right? So there's going to be a shift to sort of resource, so find new sources of outsourced personnel through traditional offshoring and digital offshoring is my prediction. And well, I think it's here now.
I think it fits in with some other trends we're seeing in the workforce, right? Even in the U.S., we're seeing relocation. And we talk about the Great Resignation. Actually, at mass, there's also a great relocation going on. And not just from the Northeast of California to Florida or Texas, even within states, people are moving to more rural areas, secondary cities, tertiary cities. I mean, there's a retailer called Tractor Supply Company. They sell different farming products. More and more, they're coming into not the cities, but rural, suburban areas. They're growing phenomenally because the working population is moving closer to them, right? So you're right. I think it has a major demographic impact. We'll see, not just a technology impact.
Yeah. The last major prediction I had, and then I had a plus one. The last major prediction may be obvious, may not be. So there are in technology, we talk a lot about customer experience. So there's a whole CX movement. It used to be UX, right? The user experience. And there's a ton of effort, innovation in customer experience, especially the last 2 years, because the only way you can convert, retain customers was through the digital experience you provided. So there was a lot of effort across a variety of consultants and platform vendors and software vendors. And employee experience wasn't the same. So if you're dealt with them, and you mentioned the old aging AP systems. So if you're an employee and you have to deal with a system that would make you weep, and we still have AS400s running out with green screens, right? And then you go.
AS400 in healthcare, you still have the MUMS operating system.
Oh my God! I remember that. It's. I think those two worlds are now worlds apart, and it's the same human being interacting with them. So this will have to converge, and I think wouldn't normally do it, but it's like earlier conversation by AP. The disruption is choice of work. So people have to put up with the crap, if you will, of dealing with systems that just no longer fun to work with. They're not augmented. So, I can't just tell my assistant what to do. I think it's gonna clash. And I think those tools are making it. I mean, this all happens through shadow IT already, obviously, but that's not new. But I think now the users can describe, this is what I'm looking for. This is the experience I want. And I think there's going to be a big convergence between the two experiences, is what I predict.
An executive at Cognizant told me a few years ago, he said, Vinnie, it's the Sunday night, Monday morning discrepancy. He says, Sunday night, our TVs have evolved so much, our Sonos, everything in the house, smart everything, smart sensors, and it come Monday morning to really shitty.
True story.
And that's become reinforced even more during the pandemic, right? So you're right. The what the customer demands, the employee needs to be able to support, and the employee is going to demand that too. So tell me the bonus.
So the bonus. So this is when I chat with clients and colleagues about it. This is where we most disagree. Not even the metaverse, and it's about automated enterprises, and I anticipate. So first of all, I think. So let me define it. So as much automation as possible, and I don't mean automation in terms of RPA, which I'm involved with. I just mean the process end to end is running on its own, and I think we underestimate how much of this is happening, and because people think in blacks and whites, right? So I expect a business that's manual to be completely automated overnight. So I don't see those fully automated businesses yet. But two things, you see a lot more than you think. So because no business, if I imagine an autonomous enterprise that will just perform its function without human intervention, it will still have some kind of agent. Somebody has to interact with them as a buyer and a customer. We're in a human world. I don't hope that will never go away. But if you think about, I don't know if you or your viewers ever signed up for Robinhood. There was no human interaction anywhere in the process. Everything is automated. In fact, to this date, I don't know how to interact with them. And but that's an obvious example. I have no idea what percentage of their process is automated, but in terms of customer-facing process, I think it's 90%, 95%, including regulatory steps like filing for options disclosures and things like that. It's astonishing. But I think if you just think about like something like an Amazon, which most people say they're as far as automated as possible because they have 1 million employees. Oh, they're actually pretty close. Because if you think about like pick, pack, ship process, that used to be completely manual. Then it started with picking and the bots. And then the packing started with bots. Now the shipping is with bots. So they actually deployed so much automation in the entire process. Order entry has always been automated. There's no 800 number for order entry. So if somebody looks at the end-to-end business of an Amazon, the merchandising business, you would be astonished what high percentage of that is actually an automated enterprise. So that's how I think about this in this prediction is I think we're going to see a lot of enterprises with extremely automated customer-facing processes and back office processes way beyond what they were able to do even about 2 years ago. And, be as automated as you can. But I think this thing, historically, it has been challenging for many reasons. One is if you want to be automated, you still want human supervision or you worry about job loss, right? So you don't want to cross that bridge oftentimes. But now you can't find anybody. There's 10.5 million jobs on the field. So isn't this a great time to start thinking about it? I was at my hairdresser, not that you can tell, but they actually talked about their shop is considering, it's a major chain, they're considering bringing in bots to do not the hair, but some of the trimming and things like because there's no people, right? So I think it's going to happen. Probably not this year, but I think you're going to see a lot more Robin Hoods is what I predict.
Well, not just a Robin Hood. In the industrial world, you mentioned Amazon, right? So I visited one of their distribution centers and I wrote it up. Yeah. It was remarkable that how little the human beings do. They have 1 million employees, but if you look at the process, there are miles and miles of conveyor belts, thousands of Kiva robots that are actually doing all the running around and the picking and so on, right? And even more impressive, when the station where they're boxing stuff, the machine actually, depending on the box size, cuts within the precise amount of tape. So these guys only have to put that in, right? And so that's one phenomenal example. The other thing is I interviewed a paper pulp manufacturing company. They're looking at a complete autonomous paper plant. Okay. They're not there yet, but just to even imagine something that complex running near autonomous is phenomenal. So you're right. We hear, Oracle talk about autonomous database. That is so tiny compared to the overall end-to-end process automation that is potentially, companies are looking at. So that's great. Well, so what you're month 2 of your of the year, how many are you feeling good about, and how many do you think will be maybe you'll slip?
So I feel very good about hybrid workforce. I think there's going to be a ton of innovation. That's where the big boys, the Facebooks, Googles, NVIDIAs will enter the enterprise space. So I think, it's going to have the augmented pieces of it, but it's all coming together, right? So I think enabling remote and hybrid workforces is going to be a ton of innovation. So I feel very good about this. Decentralized finance, I think, is still keep running into regulatory headwinds. So I don't think the industry can innovate as well. Accounts payable and inertia, right? But I do think that industry in general, just around blockchains, smart contracts, there's just a lot of headwinds that slow down innovation, and maybe for the right reasons. But I think it happens. I'm not. Like I said, I'm feeling probably like digital offshoring. I thought it's going to happen 5 years ago because there's the kind of work that gets outsourced and offshored is so menial, yet it hasn't happened yet. So maybe the one that's my number 4 that I expected to move fastest maybe is gonna move a little slower than I thought. And autonomous, I mean, that's my +1. I'm hoping it's happening already. I think it's happening already. To your point, you just reconfirmed it for me, so thank you. But you said something which is fascinating to me. So you said something about trucking industry, right? What's in all of these predictions, and these are just observations from customers, right? What's astonishing to me, how much innovation comes from industries that are not in San Jose or San Antonio, right? So it's healthcare. It happened like trucking. I mean, why does it happen in trucking? Because they can't get truckers. So I was talking to a Kenworth distributor down in Miami, and he was talking about, think about augmented reality. We're joking about this. And he says, we're thinking about it because if I have a truck driver breaking down somewhere in the middle of the U.S., there's nobody to dispatch right now. Nobody can help him, but he could pop on an Oculus headset and somebody could look at this truck with him and fix the damn thing, right? So it's just, I think industries under pressure will innovate a lot faster.
That's a great way to look at it. Tamas, this is fantastic. Thank you for sharing your forecast, and as always, you keep innovating. Thank you for using a new platform for this.
Well, Vinnie, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and looking forward to coming back in a couple of months and look at any of these came to be.
Let's do it towards the end of the year.
Sounds good.